수능영어 독해지문입니다. 등하교시 자기 전에 반복해서 들으면서 학습하세요.
18번. 다음 글의 목적으로 가장 적절한 것은 Dear students, I am Amanda Clark, the school club director, and I am writing to you about our school clubs. Over the last few semesters, there have been requests for more diverse school clubs. For this reason, the school decided to expand the number of clubs for extracurricular activities. This provides students with an opportunity to make additional clubs. Students can make any type of club based on their various interests, such as hip-hop, K-pop dancing, or coding. Therefore, I am encouraging you to submit a proposal for a new club that you would like to create. Please turn this in to my office by the end of this week. I look forward to seeing your great ideas. Best regards, Amanda Clark. 19번. 다음 글에 드러난 소피의 심경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은? Where could it be? Sophie asked herself. It had been more than 10 years since she had last visited the area where she had grown up. The village had changed a lot over time. Uncertain, she awkwardly looked around at her surroundings. She walked the narrow streets of the village, unsure about which way to go. Suddenly, Sophie saw a familiar sight. Yes, this must be it, she thought. In front of her was a wall with flowers painted on it. Although the colors were now faded, the familiar shapes on the wall were the same ones she had painted with her father as a child. Sophie nodded, smiled brightly, and walked toward the gate. At last, she had finally found the house she had grown up in. 1. Confused, pleased. 2. Confident, embarrassed. 3. Thrilled, anxious. 4. Relieved, nervous. 5. Bored, excited. 20번. 다음 글에서 필자가 주장하는 바로 가장 적절한 것은? The study of literature has repeatedly failed to recognize the influence of modern musical lyricists and their contributions to the evolution of language. Unlike Shakespeare, who has been studied and celebrated for his development of the English language, particularly in vocabulary and grammatical structure, modern songwriters have experienced restraints on the acknowledgement of their contributions and largely been ignored. Over the past century, we have witnessed an explosion of incredible literary works by these artists who, through their music, have used linguistic manipulation and storytelling to enrich our language and literature, producing lyrics of distinct and complex imagery. Songwriters have had an incredible literary impact on our language. Their remarkable works, including influences on modern language development, must be recognized in the field of modern literature. 21번. 밑줄 친 made a lot of work less. 스티키가 다음 글에서 의미하는 바로 가장 적절한 것은? Digital platforms have made a lot of work less sticky. As work becomes ever more modularized, commoditized, and standardized, and as markets for digital work are created, ties between service work and particular places can be disconnected. While the business process of outsourcing that emerged in the 1990s allowed large companies to take advantage of a global reserve army by moving their call centers to cheap and distant labor markets, cloud work changes the volume and granularity at which geographically non-proximate work can take place. A small business in New York can hire a freelance transcriber in Nairobi one day and New Delhi the next. No offices or factories need to be built, no local regulations are observed, and in most cases, no local taxes are paid. The switch in the production network of work happens by simply sending some emails or clicking some buttons on a digital work platform. And, in this way, the employer leaves behind no material traces in the places where was once an employer. 1. Settled the locational dilemma of the global markets. 2. Elevated the spatial flexibility in conducting business. 3. Weakened the geographical expansion of local business. 4. Relieved the strict legal processes of regional outsourcing. 5. Allowed business to be less complicated in its hiring process. 22번. 다음 글의 요지로 가장 적절한 것은? A sport ecosystem exists based on the type and rate of coopetition existing. Coopetition is defined as the simultaneous pursuit of cooperation and competition among firms to leverage strategically important resources for superior value creation purposes. It is a useful way to understand the dynamic nature of sport businesses which need to collaborate for resource efficiency purposes but potentially compete with each other. This special relationship should be managed properly due to trust and confidence issues being paramount. It can be challenging to be collaborative and competitive in sport as they involve different forms of behavior. This means a careful balancing act may be required in terms of the amount of emphasis placed on each activity. Often sport managers will try to be more competitive due to performance reasons and less collaborative. By necessity, they may need to share information, but do so in a cautious manner. This means it might be better to have plans in place about how to pursue both simultaneously. This will ensure one is not neglected at the expense of the other. 23번. 다음 글의 주제로 가장 적절한 것은? Emphasizing speed over frequency can make sense in contexts where everyone is expected to plan around the timetable, including peak-only commute services and very long trips with low demand. In all other contexts, though, it seems to be a common motorist's error. Roads are there all the time, so their speed is the most important fact that distinguishes them. But transit is only there if it's coming soon. If you have a car, you can use a road whenever you want and experience its speed. But transit has to exist when you need its span, and it needs to be coming soon frequency. Otherwise, waiting time will wipe out any time savings from a faster service. Unless you're comfortable planning your life around a particular scheduled trip, speed is worthless without frequency. So a transit map that screams about speed and whispers about frequency may simply be planting confusion. 1. Consequences of adjusting frequency of transit. 2. Significance of designing an accurate transit map. 3. Importance of valuing frequency in public transportation. 4. Impact of creating high-speed public transportation systems. 5. Methods to improve speed and frequency of commute services. 24번. 다음 글의 제목으로 가장 적절한 것은? The economic benefit of culturetainment makes it attractive to politicians and policymakers alike. A potential increase in inbound visitor numbers coupled with their demand for related goods and services, travel, accommodation, retail is an incentive for those within governments and authorities to work with cultural groups in order to develop celebrations and commemorations into larger and more high-profile events. However, such commercialization risks culturetainment becoming homogeneous and losing its original message that could lead to a dilution of audiences. This could also lead to smaller non-commercial independent events being set up that would only serve to divide audiences further. This is something that planners and stakeholders will need to balance against potential financial gain. Changing political, social, and religious landscapes will lead to the emergence of new cultures, and with them new culturetainment experiences. Overall, this is a healthy growth sector of the entertainment industry, but one that by its very nature is delicate in the face of exploitation. 1. The commercialization of culture and its unexpected benefits. 2. Cash or soul. When culture couples with entertainment. 3. Culturetainment, an ambition of entertainment to be a culture. 4. New cultures, the poisonous fruit of culturetainment. 5. Why balanced investments matter in the entertainment industry. 25번. 다음 도표의 내용과 일치하지 않는 것은? The graph above shows the percentages of U.S. teenagers who spent time with friends by communication type based on a survey conducted between 2014 and 2015. 1. In the category of everyday, text messaging showed the highest percentage among the 4 types of communication that teenagers use to spend time with friends. 2. In the category of less often, the percentage of teenagers who spend time with friends through talking on the phone was more than twice that of teenagers who did so through text messaging. 3. The percentage of teenagers who spend time with friends through talking on the phone in the category of everyday was lower than that of teenagers who did so in the category of less often. 4. In the category of less often, emailing was the second highest in percentage among the types of communication listed above. 5. The percentage of teenagers who spend time with friends through video chatting in the category of less often was higher than that of teenagers who did so in the category of every day. 26번. 맥스 클라이벌에 관한 다음 글의 내용과 일치하지 않는 것은? Max Kleiber, a pioneer in the study of animal biology, was best known for his research on animal nutrition and metabolism. He was born in Zurich, Switzerland, in 1893. Kleiber graduated from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in 1920 and earned his doctoral degree in 1924. He came to the University of California at UC Davis in 1929 to conduct research on energy metabolism in animals. In 1952, Kleiber received the Distinguished Borden Award from the American Institute of Nutrition and, a year later, the Morrison Award from the American Society for Animal Production. Kleiber's book, The Fire of Life, was published in 1961 and subsequently translated into German, Polish, Spanish, and Japanese. Kleiber was an outstanding teacher, popular with undergraduates and graduate students alike. Before his death, a new classroom building at UC Davis was named Kleiber Hall in his honor. 29번. 다음 글의 밑줄 친 부분 중 어법상 틀린 것은? We are exceptionally smart, and this helps us adapt to a wide range of environments. But we are not nearly smart enough as individuals to solve the adaptive problems that confronted modern humans as they spread across the globe. The package of tools, foraging techniques, ecological knowledge, and social arrangements used by any group of foragers being far too complex for any individual to create. We are able to learn all the things we need to know in each of the many different environments in which we live only because we acquire information from others. We are much better at learning from others than other species are, and we are motivated to learn from others even when we do not understand why our models are doing what they are doing. This psychology allows human populations to accumulate pools of adaptive information that greatly exceed the inventive capacities of individuals. 30번. 다음 글의 밑줄 친 부분 중 문맥상 낱말의 쓰임이 적절하지 않은 것은? Situational ethics is an ethical theory that takes into account the context of a situation or an act when judging whether it is ethical. Supporters of this theory willingly permit casting aside absolute moral standards. In the absence of a universal standard or law, what matters is the outcome or consequences. So, the end justifies the means. Possibly the following contrasting realities can help illustrate the application of situational ethics. In a pickup game of basketball played among friends, everyone is expected to call his or her own fouls or acknowledge knocking the ball out of bounds. Caring about one's friends and maybe getting to keep playing with the group leads to these actions. But once an organized game is played with officials, most athletes will not admit to the same fouls or violations, as the end goal of winning is more important than expressing concern for competitors. Situational ethics has been extended by many athletes and coaches to mean trying to get away with as many actions on the field or court as possible to abandon competitive advantages. 31에서 34번. 다음 빈칸에 들어갈 말로 가장 적절한 것을 고르시오. 31번. The early grain trade firms were active in both surplus-producing and food-deficit regions, and these firms made it their business to know the state of supply and demand in both. Because this information was the key to their profitability, these firms worked in relative secrecy, frequently built on family ties, trust, and loyalty. In addition, these firms were able to benefit from the rise of commodity exchanges and commodities futures markets that emerged in the mid-1800s. Agricultural markets are naturally unstable due to changes in harvest size that result from variable weather patterns and other factors. Locking in prices by buying and selling grain for future delivery helped these firms to minimize such risks. It made sense for the grain trading companies to manage their risks within a single firm that was operating in more than one country, rather than operating as independent national companies trading with each other. Their access to information in multiple markets enabled them to easily cover the risks associated with agricultural commodity trade. 1. Profitability. 2. Unification. 3. Innovation. 4. Reputation. 5. Morality. 32번. The basic guidelines for good style are not mysterious. In fact, you use them every day in conversation. In conversation and in writing, we all rely heavily on cooperation to make sense of exchanges, and a polished practical style makes cooperation easier. Writers develop such a style by acknowledging that readers expect the same things that listeners expect in conversation: clarity, relevance, and proportion. If you listen to someone who is not clear, who cannot stay on the topic, or who offers too much or too little information, you will quickly lose interest in the conversation. Writers, too, need to be clear, stay on the topic, and give information appropriately. In fact, this attention to audience and appropriateness may be even more important in writing than in conversation, because writing does not permit the nonverbal communication and immediate feedback that are part of conversation. As writers, we have to anticipate the absent reader's response. In effect, we have to imagine both halves of a virtual conversation. 1. Recognize the limitations of writing and conversation. 2. Envision the reader's preference for stylistic writing. 3. Picture the reader's desire for more knowledge. 4. Develop collaborative writing with readers. 5. Anticipate the absent reader's response. 33번. Giving clients sufficient opportunity to react to your designs while in progress is a key to professional success. Similarly, involving prospective building users as well as clients is even more valuable in the long run. Say your client is a large corporation, such as a healthcare provider. While the hospital administration may serve as your client, no doubt the perspectives of administration personnel will differ significantly from those of doctors, interns, residents, nurses, and other medical staff who use the building regularly. In addition, the experiences of patients and visitors who use the building irregularly, often as a result of life-threatening emergencies, are altogether different as well. Understanding how each type of user experiences the current medical environment, as well as how each reacts to your prospective designs, inevitably produces a better building. People are likely to be more satisfied with a new building or addition if they have been consulted in the design process. For a large institution, this can translate into increased productivity on the job, reduced absenteeism, less turnover, and lower costs. 1. Have been engaged in multiple design training sessions. 2. Are given the opportunity to draft a new design. 3. Have established trust with the building designers. 4. Have been consulted in the design process. 5. Share their perspectives on the building with each other. 34번. Kant was a strong defender of the rule of law as the ultimate guarantee, not only of security and peace, but also of freedom. He believed that human societies were moving towards more rational forms, regulated by effective and binding legal frameworks, because only such frameworks enabled people to live in harmony, to prosper and to cooperate. However, his belief in inevitable progress was not based on an optimistic or high-minded view of human nature. On the contrary, it comes close to Hobbes's outlook. Man's violent and conflict-prone nature makes it necessary to establish and maintain an effective legal framework in order to secure peace. We cannot count on people's benevolence or goodwill, but even a nation of devils can live in harmony in a legal system that binds every citizen equally. Ideally, the law is the embodiment of those political principles that all rational beings would freely choose. If such laws forbid them to do something that they would not rationally choose to do anyway, then the law cannot be understood as a restraint on their freedom. 1. Regarded as reasonably confining human liberty. 2. Viewed as a strong defender of the justice system. 3. Understood as a restraint on their freedom. 4. Enforced effectively to suppress their evil nature. 5. Accepted within the assumption of ideal legal frameworks. 35번. 다음 글에서 전체 흐름과 관계없는 문장은 There are few of us who don't at least want to make time for self-care activities, such as exercise, hobbies, or relaxation. We start each day with the best of intentions, but then get stuck by the flood of email messages or pulled into an unexpected meeting. As we struggle to reprioritize so we can get everything done before our deadlines, often our self-care activities are the first thing to be given up. No matter how much we plan, we all occasionally have days when that happens. In the short term, the impact of missing that grand deadline may be greater than the impact of missing a woodworking class. Needless to say, we should try to enroll in the woodworking class before the design class, because it is more competitive to get into and more beneficial to us. But it's important to recognize the cumulative impact of not prioritizing self-care and to make sure that in the long term, this is the exception rather than the norm. 36에서 37번. 주어진 글 다음에 이어질 글의 순서로 가장 적절한 것을 고르시오. 36번. We usually think of a clock as a physical thing, like an alarm clock or a wristwatch, but a clock is really a process embodied in a machine, and the nature of that process is repetitive. A. Indeed, it is almost impossible to think of a clock that does not depend on a repetitive cycle of events. The only example that comes to mind readily is a candle marked in hours. But here too there is iteration, the repeated burning of molecules of wax, so this too is an iterative process, although at first masked. B. The use of radiocarbon dating is another, much longer scale clock that also appears to be like this. It seems to yield a smooth timescale, but in fact does not. The decay of atoms of carbon-14 is repetitive, although on a large scale it gives the appearance of being continuous. C. A clock can be almost any process that repeats itself over and over again for an indefinite period. Water clocks drip at a steady pace. Quartz crystals vibrate regularly. 37번. Philosophy allows us to ask much broader questions than many other scientific disciplines. It is capable of looking at the bigger picture and providing important insights into the relationships between different areas of knowledge. A. This means that while philosophy can provide valuable insights into theoretical concepts and broader ethical questions, it needs to be supplemented by empirical findings and experiments to reach a more comprehensive understanding. B. Philosophers tend to ask questions rather than provide definitive answers, and their contributions often consist of challenging established assumptions and proposing new research approaches. However, for a more comprehensive understanding of the nature of consciousness, close collaboration between philosophy and neuroscience is required. C. Philosophy is particularly important for the interdisciplinary efforts of cognitive science, where it helps to bridge gaps between different disciplines and pioneer new ways for research. Unlike scientific methods, philosophizing is a non-empirical approach that attempts to validate concepts through logical thinking and argumentation. 38에서 39번. 글의 흐름으로 보아 주어진 문장이 들어가기에 가장 적절한 곳을 고르시오. 38번. Sometimes these internal narratives we form not only shape our beliefs and opinions, but also become deeply rooted in our identity. While stories clearly dominate statistics from both memorability and persuasiveness perspectives, it's rarely a battle between facts and anecdotes, or even facts and other facts. The real clash is actually between stories, the predominant incumbent, and a new challenger. As storytelling creatures, we routinely form narratives to help us understand the world around us. When we experience different events or encounter various facts, our minds seek to make sense of them by forming stories around them. For example, if you have had some bad experiences with graduates from a particular university, you may create a negative narrative in your mind about people who went to that school. Suddenly, you judge everyone from the university by what you've experienced on just a few unfortunate occasions. For example, the narratives you have formed around gun control or climate change are most likely related with your political ideology, who you are as an individual. 39번. The difference is that the action in the game world can only be explored through the virtual bodily space of the avatar. A video game has its own model of reality, internal to itself, and separate from the player's external reality, the player's bodily space, and the avatar's bodily space. The avatar's bodily space, the potential actions of the avatar in the game world, is the only way in which the reality of the external reality of the game world can be perceived. As in the real world, perception requires action. Players extend their perceptual field into the game, encompassing the available actions of the avatar. The feedback loop of perception and action that enables you to navigate the world around you is now one step removed. Instead of perceiving primarily through interaction of your own body with the external world, you're perceiving the game world through interaction of the avatar. The entire perceptual system has been extended into the game world. 40번. 다음 글의 내용을 한 문장으로 요약하고자 한다. 빈칸 A, B에 들어갈 말로 가장 적절한 것은? In modern societies, the performing arts form a distinct category of public entertainment in opposition to the mass distribution through the media of expertly staged performances, which have been recorded and edited. By contrast, theater, ballet, circus, concert, rodeo, storytelling, etc. unfold their signs in real space and time and engage audiences who respond cognitively and emotionally on the spot. Performers and audiences are involved in shared enjoyment. But sometimes, frustration occurs within the boundaries of such ritualistic events. In industrialized and computerized cultures, the performing arts become economically unstable because the institutions which sustain them increasingly depend on public and corporate funding. However, they retain their power of fascination for large, if not massive audiences, who prize the experiential, risk-loaded, and one-time event quality they afford. In traditional and local cultures, performances still survive and provide their audiences with a unique fulfillment in smaller scale, economically sustainable institutional settings. In a situation of financial challenges due to reliance on external funding, the performing arts, which provide unique and live experiences, secure audiences who value those experiences. 1. Uncertainty. Lose. 2. Imbalance. Split. 3. Challenges. Secure. 4. Stability. Reach. 5. Advantages. Support. 41에서 42번. 다음 글을 읽고 물음에 답하시오. There is an obvious problem with the history of dress in all of its displays, and that is, although textiles survive from early periods and cultures of recorded history, actual garments do not provide an uninterrupted flow of evidence across the same long time span. Therefore, to give the study of dress equal significance to other areas such as architecture, painting, prints, drawings, and sculpture, it was inevitable that these other areas would provide much of the source material. The history of surviving dress really only starts in the 17th century, and, like all artifacts described as fine or decorative art, is a highly visual subject. However, unlike most of the categories of collection and study that make up those areas, it is fluid rather than static. Garments should be seen in movement on a human body, not frozen on a display figure. This is one of the many difficulties when curating collections of costume, and also why some modern writers find costume collections physically and intellectually lifeless. Fortunately, in the period after 1660, when more items of dress survive, to enrich our understanding of the history of the subject, there are also many painted, printed, photographed, and filmed sources of evidence of people in clothing caught in movement. Often a variety of different types of illustrative examples will provide evidence about how a garment was worn within the period in which it was made. Without the information contained in art in all of its forms, from drawing to sculpture, it is unlikely that displays of historic dress would be awkward imitations of the intentions of their original makers and owners. 41번. 윗글의 제목으로 가장 적절한 것은? 1. Dress as visual arts. Record what you wear, now. 2. Visual sources. Filling in the gaps of dress history. 3. Why do collectors want the unknown dresses of history? 4. Dress culture, searching for the origin of human clothing. 5. Seeing is believing. Importance of illustration and dress design. 43에서 45번. 다음 글을 읽고 물음에 답하시오. A. Mia, let's go walk our dog. Julia called out, but there was no answer. She checked her daughter's room and found that Mia was absorbed in her smartphone, wearing her earbuds. Julia was concerned about her daughter. She turned to her husband Sam. Mia seems to live inside her phone, not with us. Sam nodded. I know. I feel like she is growing distant from us. Why don't we set up a family reading club? Julia brightened at the suggestion, and Sam promised to talk with Mia about it. B. Mia's family held their first book club meeting on Saturday afternoon. Everyone enjoyed the book Mia had chosen. Julia was the first to speak. Dr. Duval nearly invented a drug for eternal life, yet disappeared one day and ended up running Café Paris. That's such a mystery. Mia responded, her eyes sparkling. Mom, I understand him. He always dreamed of being a barista, and his dream came true. Sam supported his daughter, and their conversation grew lively. During the discussion, Mia felt reconnected with her parents and already looked forward to their next book club meeting. C. At the library, Mia scanned the shelves for nearly an hour, feeling lost among the endless titles. Then, a librarian approached and asked, "Looking for something in particular?" "I need a book for my family's reading club," Mia admitted. "What genre do you enjoy?" she asked kindly. I like mysteries," Mia replied. The librarian handed her a book titled Café Paris and said with a smile, "You'll love this one." Mia thanked her and checked it out. D. When Sam suggested starting a family reading club, Mia immediately shook her head and said, "No, Dad, I don't have time to read books. You know how busy I am with exams all semester." He didn't give up. "But wouldn't it be fun if we all read the same story and shared our thoughts? You could simply read for 20 minutes, maybe during your lunch break." After some persuasion, Mia reluctantly agreed. Deep down, she knew she was spending too much time on her phone. So she asked, "Dad, can I choose the first book?" Sam gladly said, "Yes."
They say Kyunghee University campus is the most beautiful in the country.
Yeah, especially when the cherry blossoms bloom, it's so pretty.